I was about to transfer my company to my son. My daughter-in-law smiled and handed me a cup of coffee. The housekeeper accidentally bumped into me and whispered, "Don't drink it. Trust me." I secretly switched cups with my daughter-in-law. 5 minutes later, she had a reaction. They thought they were so smart. They tried their best to destroy me, but they had no idea what was waiting for them. Justice would be served. Before I tell you what happened next, in that ambulance, drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching this from? I need to know this story is reaching people who need to hear it. My name is Vincent Callahan, and at 69 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal the business world could offer. I was wrong. The worst betrayal was waiting for me at home, disguised as a family meeting on a Tuesday morning in October. I'd built Callahan Development Corporation into a $22 million real estate empire here in Greenwich, Connecticut. The Colonial on Round Hill Road had been mine and Eleanor's for 30 years. She'd been gone for 10 now. But some mornings I still expected to find her in the kitchen. Marcus, our only child, had been working at the company for 5 years. Not exceptional. But he was family. That had to count for something. That morning, Dorothy Palmer had already brewed my coffee. She'd been our housekeeper for 20 years, quiet and efficient. But something was different today. Her hands shook as she arranged the coffee service. Her eyes kept darting toward the window. "Everything all right, Dorothy?" "Yes, Mr. Callahan. Too tight, too controlled," Marcus had called the night before. "Dad, we need to discuss the succession plan. It's time." He was 42, married to Lillian Sharp, with a chemistry background from some pharmaceutical company. She'd joined us as marketing director 2 years ago. They arrived at 10 sharp. Marcus in an expensive suit, Lillian carrying pastries and an insulated carrier with 3 coffee cups. "Morning, Dad." Marcus kissed my cheek, perfunctory like always. "Lillian brought your favorite. Dark roast from that new place on Newbury Street." Odd. Dorothy's coffee was already prepared in my favorite blue porcelain cup. But Lillian was setting out the new cups, smiling, that practiced smile. "You're so thoughtful," I said, accepting the cup. It smelled different, slightly bitter. We settled into my study. Marcus spread paperwork across the desk. "We need you to sign these today, Dad. Just formalities." I reached for my coffee. Lillian watched with an intensity that should have registered as wrong. That's when Dorothy appeared beside my chair, carrying a tray of papers. She stumbled clumsy in a way I'd never seen. The tray clattered, papers scattered. Her mouth was suddenly at my ear. "Don't drink it, sir," she whispered. "Please, just trust me." Her hand knocked my arm. Coffee spilled across the mahogany desk. Marcus cursed. Dorothy apologized profusely, knocking over more things. In the chaos, Lillian grabbed one of the cups, I couldn't tell which anymore, and took a long drink. "God, Dorothy," Lillian snapped. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Callahan." But Dorothy was looking at me, not Lillian. Her eyes held relief. 5 minutes of cleanup. Marcus irritated about ruined documents. Lillian dabbing at coffee stains on her blazer. Dorothy's warning echoed in my head. "Don't drink it. Trust me." Then Lillian went pale. It happened fast. One moment complaining about dry cleaning. The next swaying in her chair. "I feel strange. Honey?" Marcus moved toward her. "What's wrong? Dizzy. Everything's spinning." She tried to stand. Her legs buckled. She collapsed, and I saw it. The tremor in her hands, sweat on her forehead. Pupils contracted to pinpoints. "Call 911." Marcus already had his phone out, but his voice sounded rehearsed. "Yes, my wife. She's collapsed." Lillian's body went rigid. She convulsed back, arching, coffee cup shattering. Dorothy moved fast, turning her on her side. I knelt beside them, my brain trying to process. Food poisoning. Stroke, but Dorothy's warning kept echoing. "Don't drink it. That coffee. The one I was supposed to drink. The one Lillian had grabbed by mistake." The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Paramedics worked fast questions, IV stretcher. They wheeled Lillian toward the door. I watched Marcus's face when he thought no one was looking. I'd spent 42 years learning to read people. It was how I'd built an empire. What I saw wasn't fear for his dying wife. It was calculation. The paramedics worked fast, but all I could focus on was Marcus across from me, phone pressed to his ear voice, cracking in exactly the right places. "I don't know what happened," he was saying. "She just collapsed." But I kept hearing Dorothy's whisper. "Don't drink it, sir." Greenwich Hospital's emergency entrance was 3 miles from home. The automatic doors opened with a hiss. They wheeled Lillian straight into a trauma bay. A doctor appeared, late 40s, dark hair pulled back. Her badge read, Dr. Judith Martin, Emergency Medicine. "What happened?" she asked. Marcus started talking. Coffee collapse convulsions. He was good at this. 42 years, and I'd never realized what a skilled performer my son was. Any known allergies? Dr. Martin examined Lillian's unresponsive form. None, Marcus said. Her pupils are severely constricted. Heart rate's erratic. She looked at a nurse. Full tox screen. CBC chem panel. And add arsenic levels. Now. Arsenic. Arsenic. Marcus's surprise sounded genuine. Covering bases. But Dr. Martin's expression told me she already knew. She turned to me. You were there when this happened? We were having coffee in my study. My housekeeper spilled it. There was confusion. Lillian drank from one of the cups. Which cup was meant for you, Mr. Callahan? The question landed like a fist. I don't know. It happened so fast. I'm ordering blood work for you, too. If that coffee was intended for you. She didn't finish. A police officer arrived while they drew my blood. Officer Rodriguez. Mandatory reporting, Dr. Martin explained. Suspected poisoning required law enforcement notification. Marcus shifted in his chair. Poisoning, that's insane. Nobody answered him. The results came back 90 minutes later. Dr. Martin returned with a tablet and an expression that told me everything. Your daughter-in-law has acute arsenic poisoning. Lethal dose. She's critical. My hands stayed steady. Business training. Never show weakness. And me? You have chronic arsenic exposure, Mr. Callahan. Consistent low-dose poisoning over approximately 3 months. We're starting chelation therapy immediately. 3 months? July, August, September. The fatigue I'd blamed on age. The nausea I'd attributed to stress. The confusion during board meetings. Someone had been killing me slowly. Today was supposed to be the day it finally worked. Who has access to your food and beverages? Dr. Martin asked. My son, his wife, my housekeeper. The detective will want to speak with all of them. Through the consultation room window, I could see Marcus in the hallway. Phone out, fingers moving fast across the screen. Texting someone. Destroying evidence, maybe. I'd taught him everything about business. How to read a balance sheet. Negotiate a contract spot. Weakness. But I'd also taught him without meaning to how to hide what you really felt. How to perform. He looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. For just a second his mask slipped. Not guilt. Not fear. Just that same calculation. Like he was solving a problem. Planning his next move. My son. The boy I'd raised. The man I'd built a legacy for. I'd been a businessman for 40 years. I'd survived market crashes, hostile takeovers, recessions. I knew the difference between bad luck and deliberate sabotage. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Premeditated, methodical, patient. And watching my son throw that pane of glass in Greenwich Hospital's emergency wing, one thought kept echoing through my mind: I was supposed to be dead. I found Dorothy the next morning in the hospital chapel. Alone in the last pew, rosary beads in her hands, tears streaming down her face. She looked up when my footsteps echoed on stone. Mr. Callahan, I'm so sorry. I sat beside her. The chapel smelled of furniture polish and old hymn books, scents that meant Eleanor. Sunday mornings, a life that felt impossibly distant. You saved my life, Dorothy. I should have told you sooner. Her hands shook. I saw her 6 weeks ago, Mrs. Lillian, in the kitchen before breakfast. She had a vial, clear liquid. Put drops in your coffee, stirred. It walked away like nothing happened. She pulled a small spiral notebook from her purse. Inside, 3 months of careful handwriting. Dates, times, observations. July 15th. Mr. C. complained of nausea. Mrs. L. in kitchen alone at 6:30 a.m. August 3rd. Mr. C. dizzy during phone call. Coffee prepared by Mrs. L. September 10th. Mr. C. confused in board meeting. Mrs. L. made coffee that morning. You kept getting sicker, Dorothy said. Only on days when she was here early, when she insisted on helping with breakfast. Her phone showed photos blurry but clear enough. Lillian at my kitchen counter, small vial in hand. Another Lillian's purse-open vial, visible inside. I recorded them talking too. My phone in my apron pocket. The sound's terrible, but you can hear. She played audio, muffled distant like listening underwater, but I could make out voices. Marcus and Lillian somewhere in my house. The final dose? Lillian's voice. When he signs the company over? Marcus. Another recording from a week ago. Symptoms are perfect. Just need him to trust us one more time. I sat in that chapel pew, listening to my son plot my murder. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. You loved him so much. You were so proud. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, that you'd fire me and then I couldn't protect you anymore. Her voice broke. 20 years ago, my daughter needed surgery. Neuroblastoma. Stage 3. Insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatment. You paid everything. $400,000. You saved her life. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I couldn't let them kill you. I owed you my child's life. You didn't owe me anything. I owed you everything. The chapel door opened. A woman in her early 50s, practical suit badge on belt. Vincent Callahan. I'm Detective Karen Bradford, Greenwich PD. Dr. Martin said you might be here. We moved to a consultation room. Bradford recorded everything. Dorothy showed the notebook photos, played the audio. Her hands shook the entire time. Mrs. Palmer, why didn't you report this earlier? I was scared. Mr. Marcus threatened to fire me twice last month. Said I was too nosy. I thought if I accused them without proof. But you gathered proof. I had to. Bradford studied the evidence. Listened to the recordings 3 times. Finally looked at me. Mr. Callahan, based on this evidence, your son may be involved in conspiracy to commit murder. We'll need search warrants for your home, your son's residence, his office. She paused. Is there anything else you haven't told us? I thought about the cameras. The ones I'd installed 3 weeks ago when my businessman's instincts told me something was wrong. The cameras that had captured everything. Not yet, I said. Bradford's eyes narrowed. She knew I was holding something back. When you're ready, we'll need to know everything. That afternoon, I made a decision. Detective Bradford needed to know everything. I installed hidden security cameras 3 weeks ago, I said. We were back in the consultation room. Bradford's pen stopped mid-note. You what? Professional surveillance. Video and audio. My study and living room. Why didn't you mention this yesterday? I needed to be sure I could trust you. I'd called my lawyer, knew where I stood legally. I'm telling you now. Why cameras at all? Marcus pushed too hard for this meeting. Called 3 times in 1 week. Lillian's concern about my health felt rehearsed. I paused. I've read people for 40 years, Detective. My instincts said something was wrong. I wanted proof I was just being paranoid. And were you? No. 2 hours later, we reviewed footage on a laptop. Timestamped 2 weeks before the incident. My study. Marcus and Lillian alone. Lillian held up a vial. This is the final dose. You're sure about the amount? Marcus asked. It'll cause cardiac arrest within hours. By the time anyone tests for arsenic, it'll be too late. And it won't be traced. Oh, arsenic mimics heart failure perfectly. The coroner will see exactly what we want. She smiled. Cold. Clinical. Once he signs the company over, we do it that morning. Then it's ours. $22 million plus the insurance. More footage. Days of planning. Dosage calculations. Alibis. Marcus talking about selling the company immediately, moving somewhere warm. Lillian researching countries without extradition treaties. When the last clip finished, I sat back. I watched this every night for 2 weeks. Kept hoping he'd change his mind. That my son would remember honor, loyalty. My voice cracked. He never did. Why didn't you confront them? Because I needed proof. And because I loved him too much to believe it. Until I had no choice. Bradford made calls. Got warrants. The searches happened the next morning. They found the arsenic vial in Lillian's office desk, hidden in a locked drawer. Financial forensics traced $500,000 moved from company accounts to Marcus's personal accounts over 8 months. Small transfers carefully structured to avoid flags. Then the insurance policies. $7 million on my life. Marcus as beneficiary. Taken out 8 months ago when the embezzlement started. When Lillian began asking about my health, my stress, my diet, Bradford called that evening. We're bringing them both in tomorrow. The evidence is overwhelming. What about Lillian? We'll question her when she's stable. She paused. Mr. Callahan, does your current will leave everything to Marcus? I looked out my hotel window. I'd checked out of the house. Couldn't sleep there anymore. Not anymore. I changed it 2 weeks ago. The day after I saw that footage. Changed it how, if Marcus betrays me, he inherits nothing. Everything goes to a foundation for elder abuse prevention. Bradford was quiet. So your son tried to murder you for an inheritance he'd never receive? Yes. Does he know? Not yet. I smiled without humor. But he will. Day 4. My lawyer slid a document across the table to Detective Bradford. The codicil is dated 2 weeks before the incident, he said. Bradford read aloud. Should my son, Marcus Callahan, be found to have committed betrayal through violence, theft, fraud, or attempted harm, the entirety of my estate shall be placed in trust for the Callahan Foundation for Elder Protection. She looked at me. You wrote this the day after you saw the footage. Yes. I couldn't let him inherit what he was willing to kill me for. So he murdered you for $22 million he'd never receive. That's the irony. He destroyed his life for nothing. Bradford's phone rang. She stepped out, returned minutes later. A woman just walked into Greenwich PD. Lisa Henderson. Worked with Lillian at Bellingham Pharmaceuticals. Says arsenic went missing from their lab 6 months ago. 6 months. Before the poisoning even started? Lisa Henderson was 43 nervous guilt across her face. I should have reported it sooner. Tell us what happened, Bradford said. Last March, our inventory showed arsenic trioxide missing, maybe 50 grams. Lillian had been asking strange questions. How long arsenic stays detectable? What tests show it whether heart failure masks poisoning? She looked at me. When I saw her picture on the news, I knew it was her. Security footage from Bellingham showed Lillian in the restricted storage area, March 15th. 2 minutes inside, leaving with lab coat pockets, fuller than before. This proves premeditation, Bradford said. 6 months of planning. The arrests happened 2 weeks later, Bradford called after. We took Marcus at 6 a.m. He asked to see you. What did he say? He wanted you to visit. Talk to him. I said nothing. Lillian's been transferred from the hospital to county jail. Both charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, embezzlement, theft of a controlled substance. Bail denied for both. Trial's probably 6 months out. His lawyer will try to blame Lillian, I said. I know, but the cameras don't lie. 6 months later, I walked into Stamford Superior Court. The courtroom was packed media sketch artists, spectators drawn by headlines. The son who poisoned his father for millions. Marcus sat at the defense table in a suit I'd bought him last Christmas. His attorney, Richard Holloway, whispered something. Marcus nodded. Then he saw me, tried to arrange his face into remorse. But I'd watched those camera recordings too many times. I knew what real Marcus looked like. The bailiff spoke. All rise. Superior Court of Connecticut is now in session, the Honorable Patricia Morrison presiding. The judge took her seat. The jury filed in 12 faces that would decide my son's fate. Prosecutor Rachel Thornton stood. Your Honor, the state is ready. Let's begin. As Thornton outlined the charges, the systematic poisoning, the embezzlement, the insurance fraud, I thought about those hidden cameras. The footage the jury would see. Marcus and Lillian plotting my death in their own voices. My son had spent 8 months planning my murder, stole $500,000, took out $7 million in life insurance, slowly poisoned me for 3 months, and on that final day he'd handed me coffee with a smile, knowing it was meant to kill me. All for an inheritance he'd never receive. The codicil I'd written ensured that. Every dollar he'd tried to steal, every asset he'd killed for it, would all go toward protecting other families from people like him. Marcus wanted my legacy. Now my real legacy was making sure other sons didn't murder their fathers. I looked at the jury. 12 strangers who would hear the evidence, see the footage, learn the truth. Justice was about to be served. Day 3. The courtroom went dark as prosecutor Rachel Thornton started the video. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear the defendants in their own words. Planning murder, laughing about it. The screen came alive. 20 feet high. My study. Marcus and Lillian, 2 weeks before the poisoning. Marcus's voice filled the room. I can't wait until the old man is gone. That company should have been mine years ago. I forced myself to watch. The jury needed to see my reaction to know that even now it destroyed me to hear it. Lillian on screen. His blood work will just show heart failure. Perfect crime. A juror gasped. Others leaned forward. Another clip. Marcus laughing. Tomorrow morning, by evening, we'll be millionaires. The laughing. That was what broke the room. Not just the words, but the joy in his voice. The happiness at my death. A juror covered her mouth. Another shook his head, staring at Marcus. Marcus kept his eyes down. Wouldn't watch himself plot murder. 10 minutes of footage. Dosage discussions. Timing. What they'd buy with the insurance money. When the lights came up, the courtroom felt heavier. Like everyone had witnessed something they couldn't unsee. The prosecution calls Dorothy Palmer. Dorothy walked to the stand in a navy dress, hands clasped. When she swore to tell the truth, her voice shook. Mrs. Palmer, How long did you work for Vincent Callahan? 20 years. Thornton approached gently. Did you observe anything unusual regarding Lillian Callahan's behavior? Dorothy described that morning 6 weeks before. Lillian with the vial. The drops in my coffee. My declining health. Why didn't you tell Mr. Callahan immediately? Because he loved his son so much. I was afraid he wouldn't believe me. That Marcus would fire me and I couldn't protect him anymore. So you gathered evidence? I took photos. Made recordings. Wrote everything down. I had to prove it. I had to save him. You saved his life that morning. I couldn't let them kill him. Tears streamed down her face. He saved my daughter's life 20 years ago. I owed him everything. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Morrison allowed it briefly before calling for order. Dorothy wiped her eyes, embarrassed. Marcus looked up, stared at Dorothy with hatred. The prosecution calls Lisa Henderson. Lisa took the stand. Explained about Bellingham Pharmaceuticals. Missing arsenic last March. Lillian's questions about detection methods, poisoning symptoms. You saw the security footage. Yes. Lillian in restricted storage. Her lab coat pockets were full when she left. What did you think when you saw the news? I knew I should have spoken up sooner. More witnesses. A financial analyst traced the embezzlement, $500,000 over 8 months. An insurance investigator found the policy's $7 million Marcus as beneficiary. Each piece built on the last. Systematic. Methodical. 8 months of planning, stealing, poisoning. The prosecution rests, Your Honor. Judge Morrison turned to the defense. Mr. Holloway? Richard Holloway stood. Expensive suit, practiced confidence. Your Honor, the defense will show that Marcus Callahan was manipulated by a woman with expertise in chemistry and psychology. That he was another victim of Lillian Callahan's scheme. I watched the jury. They'd just watched Marcus laugh about my death. Heard him say the company should have been his. Listened to him plan how to spend the inheritance. Holloway was going to blame everything on Lillian. Paint Marcus as weak, manipulated, afraid. But the cameras didn't lie, and the jury had seen the truth. Holloway stood before the jury, voice earnest. Marcus Callahan is not a monster. He's a man who fell under the influence of a sophisticated manipulator, a woman with expertise in chemistry psychology, someone who knew exactly how to control him. He was afraid to refuse her, afraid of what she might do. Prosecutor Thornton rose for rebuttal, didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. The defense wants you to believe Marcus Callahan was a victim. Let me show you what a victim sounds like. She played the footage again, just one clip. Marcus's face filling the screen. I can't wait until the old man is gone. Thornton paused it. Does that sound like fear, like someone being forced? She played another. That company should have been mine years ago. Does that sound like manipulation or entitlement? She let the silence hold. Ladies and gentlemen, the cameras show us the truth. Marcus Callahan wasn't manipulated. He was eager. He was willing. He was greedy. And the only thing he regrets is that he got caught. The jury's faces said everything. Then came my turn. I walked to the witness stand, swore to tell the truth, looked at the jury, 12 strangers who would decide my son's fate. My name is Vincent Callahan. Marcus is my only child. My voice stayed steady. Business training. But my hands shook. I raised him to value honor, integrity, family loyalty. Somewhere along the way I failed. I don't know when. I don't know how. But I failed. I paused, looked at Marcus. He was staring at the table. The poison wasn't the worst part. It was watching him smile at me every day while he planned my murder. Sitting across from him at breakfast, discussing the business, believing we were building something together, and all the while he was killing me. Slowly, deliberately. My voice cracked. I installed those cameras hoping I was wrong, praying my son would remember the values I tried to teach him, that he'd choose love over money. I swallowed hard. He chose money, every single time. I turned to face Marcus directly. He finally looked up. Marcus, you didn't just try to kill my body. You killed the father who loved you. That man is gone. He died the moment I saw that footage. And he's never coming back. The courtroom was silent. I returned to my seat. Felt every year of my 69 years in that walk. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, their faces told me everything before the 4 women spoke. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, in the first degree, we find the defendant, Marcus Callahan, guilty. Marcus's shoulders sagged. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, guilty. For Lillian the same. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Judge Morrison's voice was formal, final. Marcus Callahan, Lillian Callahan, you have been found guilty on all counts. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. Life without parole. My son would die in prison. They put him in handcuffs, led him toward the door. He looked back at me once, just once. I waited for something. Remorse, sorrow, some recognition of what he'd destroyed. But all I saw was rage. Not guilt over what he'd done, just fury that his plan had failed. My son was gone. He'd been gone long before Dorothy spilled that coffee. 3 weeks after the verdict, my lawyer executed the will Marcus had tried to kill me for. All assets of the Callahan estate, the $22 million development company, the Greenwich property, the investment portfolios, the commercial real estate holdings transferred into an irrevocable trust, the Callahan Foundation for Elder Protection. Marcus got nothing. When the prison chaplain informed him, they said he destroyed his cell, threw his cot against the bars, screamed until guards restrained him. They put him in solitary confinement for 72 hours. The chaplain visited me a week later. Professional courtesy, he said. He thought I should know that Marcus, sitting alone in that empty cell, had whispered to himself, "I killed him for nothing." There would be no redemption arc for my son. Lillian filed an appeal in June. The Connecticut Supreme Court denied it without comment. She remains in maximum security at York Correctional Institution, serving life without possibility of parole. I sold the Greenwich house in early May. Too many ghosts, I told the realtor. She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. Everyone in Greenwich knew the story by then. The poison, the housekeeper, the hidden cameras, the son who'd chosen murder over love. I established the foundation's headquarters in downtown Stamford, 3,000 square feet of modern office space, with accessible design, warm lighting, and a mission wall displaying our core values. Not a mansion, a workspace, a place where survivors could walk through the door and feel safe. Our mission was straightforward: protect elderly Americans from abuse, financial exploitation, physical harm, emotional manipulation, neglect, especially when the abuser was family. We offered legal aid, investigative support, emergency safe housing, counseling services, and advocacy. Dorothy Palmer became our executive director. The woman who'd served me coffee and toast for 20 years now led a staff of 9 professionals, 3 attorneys, 2 social workers, 2 investigators, an office manager, and a community outreach coordinator. She'd saved my life by spilling a cup of poisoned coffee. Now she was building systems to save hundreds more. The transformation was remarkable. Dorothy, who'd once deferred to everyone, now commanded conference rooms. She negotiated with prosecutors, challenged defense attorneys, spoke at community forums. Her voice, soft but unshakable, carried the weight of someone who'd faced evil and refused to look away. James Mitchell called 2 weeks after the verdict. We'd been roommates at Yale 47 years ago, business partners for 15, and friends through every season of life. He'd attended Eleanor's funeral. He'd been at our company's 25th anniversary, and when Marcus graduated business school, James had been there too proud as any uncle. "I heard what you're doing, Vince," he said. I won in. He joined our board of directors and donated $100,000 to our startup fund. "You know what I've learned," James said at our first board meeting, looking around the table at Dorothy, our lead attorney, Sarah Brown, and our financial director, Michael Torres. "Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when it matters." Dorothy met my eyes across the conference table. A slight smile, an understanding that needed no words. We were building something bigger than revenge, bigger than grief. We were building a legacy that couldn't be poisoned. Within 3 months, we'd intervened in 12 cases. 3 resulted in criminal prosecution. We'd recovered over $400,000 in stolen assets and relocated 7 survivors to safe housing. One case still visits me in quiet moments. Margaret Brennan, 76, a retired librarian from Norwalk. Her daughter-in-law had systematically drained her accounts for nearly 2 years, $200,000 gone. Margaret's son, working long hours in Boston, had no idea his wife was stealing from his mother. When we presented the bank records, the forged signatures, the shell company documents, Margaret's son wept. Then he called the police himself. Margaret came to our Stamford office 3 days after her daughter-in-law's sentencing. She took both my hands in hers, tears streaming down her weathered face. "You saved my life," she whispered. "Just like Dorothy saved yours." I looked across the room where Dorothy stood reviewing intake forms with Sarah. "No," I said gently. "We're just passing it forward." That evening, Dorothy brought 2 cups of coffee into my office. The rich aroma filled the space between past and present, poison and safety, family lost and family chosen. She set 1 cup in front of me, steam rising, warmth without fear. "To second chances," Dorothy said. I raised my cup to meet hers. "To chosen family." We drank together, survivor and savior, building something good from something terrible. Outside our window, Stamford's autumn lights glittered against the dusk. And for the first time in a year, I felt something I thought Marcus had killed forever. Hope. 18 months after the verdict, I stood in our foundation's downtown Stamford office, watching the sunrise paint gold across Long Island Sound. The Callahan Foundation for Elder Protection had helped 83 families in its first year. We'd recovered over $3 million in stolen assets. We'd seen 7 adult children convicted of financial exploitation. Dorothy had testified before the Connecticut State Legislature twice, helping pass stronger elder abuse reporting laws. Last month, 60 Minutes featured her story, The Housekeeper Who Saved a CEO's Life, aired to 12 million viewers. Speaking requests poured in from across the country. I watched her now through my office window leading our monthly support group in the conference room. 12 elderly survivors sharing their stories, finding their voices again. Dorothy Palmer, once my housekeeper, now executive director of a nationally recognized nonprofit. Time magazine had just named her to their 100 most influential people in healthcare. She'd transformed her quiet courage into a movement. Morning, Vince? I turned. James Mitchell stood in my doorway, 2 coffees in hand. My old college roommate visited every Thursday now. We'd have coffee review cases talk about everything except business. Real friendship, the kind that doesn't keep score. Marcus sent another letter, James said, carefully setting my coffee down. The 9th one in 18 months. All unopened, stacked in my desk drawer. Still not ready, I said. James nodded. He understood. Some betrayals don't heal with time. They just become scars you learn to live with. My phone buzzed. A text from our social worker, Miguel Santos' new referral. 82-year-old man's son pressuring him to sell house. Strange financial activity? Feels familiar. It always did. Another case, James asked. Always another case. I picked up my coffee, Dorothy's special blend made with care every morning. Safe, warm. A daily reminder that some people choose loyalty over convenience. Dorothy knocked and entered reading glasses perched on her nose, iPad in hand. Vincent, the Boston Globe wants an interview about our expansion into Massachusetts, and Senator Warren's office called They Want You to testify about federal elder abuse legislation. 71 years old, and I was just beginning the most important work of my life. Schedule it, I said. All of it, she smiled. That same smile that had saved my life when she whispered, "Don't drink it." How's Lillian? I asked quietly. Dorothy's smile faded. Prison medical reported declining health. Kidney failure. She'll likely die there. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just emptiness where my son's family used to be, and the new safe house. I asked, changing the subject. Opens next month. 10 beds. 24-hour security. We're naming it the Eleanor Callahan Memorial House. My late wife's name. She would have loved this turning tragedy into protection for the vulnerable. James raised his coffee cup. To the family we choose. Dorothy and I lifted ours. To second chances, Dorothy added softly. To justice, I finished. We drank together, 3 people bound not by blood, but by something stronger. Purpose, loyalty, love. Outside Stamford was waking up. Somewhere in this city, another elderly person was being exploited by someone they trusted. But today they had somewhere to turn. They had us, my real family. I'm 79 now. A decade has passed since Dorothy spilled that coffee cup and saved my life. When I look back on this true story, I see a man who confused success with legacy, who believed blood was thicker than character. I was wrong. Here's what this grandpa's story taught me. Don't ignore the warning signs when someone you love starts seeing you as an asset instead of a person. Don't wait until poison is in your cup to ask hard questions. And don't ever confuse loyalty with biology. I thank God every morning that Dorothy had the courage to act when I was blind to the truth. I thank God that He put someone in my path who valued integrity over comfort. And I thank God that He gave me a second chance to build something that matters not, a company worth millions, but a foundation that protects the vulnerable. The Callahan Foundation has now helped over 300 families. Dorothy was recently named Time Magazine's Person of the Year for Elder Advocacy. Marcus writes me letters from prison. I don't open them. This is a true story that still feels impossible, a grandpa story I never imagined telling. But if sharing this true story protects even one elderly parent from their own child's greed, then perhaps the betrayal had purpose. Real family isn't born, it's built. Choose people who choose you back. If this story moved, you please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another grandpa story that matters. And if you know an elderly person who might be at risk, please share this video. It could save a life the way Dorothy saved mine. God bless you all. And remember, trust, but verify. I never told my son about my $45,000 monthly salary. He always saw me living simply. When he invited me to meet his fiance's wealthy parents, I wanted to see what kind of people they really were. So I played the part old truck, cheap clothes, humble working man. But when I stepped through their mansion door, his future mother-in-law took one look at me and whispered to her daughter, "Don't worry, honey. Jake's father is just a cattle hand who got lucky." She had no idea the cattle hand she just mocked held the keys to her entire world. If this happened to you, how would you react? Share below. My name is Clark Brennan. I am 52 years old, and I earn about $45,000 a month running a cybersecurity firm. My son Jake has no idea. He thinks I make maybe $45,000 a year if I'm lucky. This weekend I was about to find out whether the family he wanted to marry into was worth knowing. I built Brennan Security Solutions from nothing starting in my garage 17 years ago. Today we handle cybersecurity for Fortune 500 companies and government contracts. I've never been one to show it. I drive a beat-up 2015 Ford F-150 wear Wrangler jeans and live in a modest house. Jake grew up watching me work hard and count every dollar. What he does not know is that by the time he graduated high school, I had already set aside $2 million for his future. 3 months ago, Jake called to tell me he was engaged. Madison Pierce, he said, as if I should recognize the name. Her family owned a ranch outside Austin. Real Texas legacy dad. 5 generations. That is wonderful, son, I said. When do I get to meet her? There was a pause. Soon. Her parents had been traveling. Business stuff. 1 month turned into 3. There was always another conflict, another trip. I did my own research. Pierce Ranch sat on 200 acres in hill country beautiful land. It was also mortgaged 3 times over. The Pierces were living on borrowed money, protecting an image they could barely afford. Last week Jake called again. His voice was careful. Dad, Saturday. The barbecue. I am excited for you to meet everyone. He hesitated. Just maybe keep things low-key. Low-key, I repeated. They are traditional, he said. Old school. If they ask what you do, maybe just say consulting. No need to mention your little contracts. Little contracts. Last quarter, my smallest deal involved federal security infrastructure. And Dad, he added, maybe do not talk about the truck. They care about presentation. I sat in my home office and felt something crack. My son was ashamed of me, ashamed of the man who raised him, who sacrificed everything because I drove an old truck and did not look wealthy. I will be myself, I said. I know, he replied softly. That is what worries me. After the call, I made a decision. If the Pierces could not respect a working man, they did not deserve the truth. And if my son would not stand up for his father, that truth mattered even more. Friday evening, I stood in my closet. On one side were tailored suits and Italian shoes. On the other were my everyday clothes. I reached past the Armani and pulled out a faded flannel shirt, worn Wrangler jeans, and scuffed work boots. In the mirror, I saw exactly what they expected a man who never quite made it. Perfect. Saturday morning, I drove toward hill country. I thought I was testing the Pierces. I did not yet realize the real test would be my son. I carried no anger, only resolve. Wealth had never defined me, and humility was not a disguise. If respect depended on appearances, I would accept their judgment in silence. But if my son chose comfort over character, I would finally speak. Not with money, but with truth, and let consequences fall where they belonged. Whatever happened next would shape our relationship forever. I was ready. Then, the Pierce Ranch announced itself long before I reached the gate. I had been driving through hill country for 20 minutes, watching the landscape shift from Austin's suburbs to rolling hills of cedar and live oak. The kind of Texas postcards try to capture but never quite manage. Big sky, bigger land, and the sense that you are somewhere that matters. The Pierce property began with an iron gate that likely cost more than my truck. Tall stone posts, ornate metalwork, spelling Pierce Ranch Est. 1880. A long driveway stretched ahead, lined with oak trees, older than any Pierce, maybe older than Texas itself. 200 acres spread out on both sides, pasture-wooded pockets, scattered outbuildings. The main house waited at the end, a showpiece of stone and timber, trying hard to look rustic and expensive at the same time. I parked my F-150 on gravel near a guest area. Dust settled around my boots as I stepped out. The place was impressive, I would admit that, but impressive and successful are not always the same thing. As I walked toward the house, I noticed details. The barn facing the drive had fresh paint. The back was peeling and tired. The fence near the driveway was neat, but farther out it sagged. Near an equipment shed half hidden behind an old tractor, a for sale sign leaned against the wall. Details tell you everything. I was about 30 feet from the door when voices drifted out of an open kitchen window, letting heat escape the house. Late May in Texas, every breeze matters. 2 women were talking. Jake's father, an older woman, said polished with a Texas edge. Basically a cattle hand who got lucky fixing computers. I stopped, not offended, just listening. Keep him busy with Dale and the ranch tour, she continued. Don't let him near the real investors. We need Jake's trust fund for expansion, not his father's opinions. A younger voice replied, uneasy. Madison, I guessed. Mom, that's harsh. He's Jake's father. I'm sure he's nice, the older woman said gently. In his own limited way. Smile, be gracious. We can't have him embarrassing Jake in front of our friends. Standing there with dust on my boots and sweat on my back, I felt amusement. Not anger. Not yet. I had been right about these people. They had judged me already. Cattle hand. Limited. An embarrassment. And the best part was that they thought Jake had money. They wanted to use my son. That was almost funny. I straightened my flannel shirt and decided to give them exactly what they expected. Every bit of it. The for sale sign caught my eye again. Public record said foreclosure was close. This family feared embarrassment while everything slipped away. Perfect. I walked up and knocked on the heavy oak door. 3 firm raps echoed inside. The voices stopped at once. Time to see if their faces matched their words. The test had officially begun for all us. The door opened, and a woman who'd clearly never missed a spa appointment looked me up and down like I was tracking mud. Linda Pierce was everything old Texas money looked like when it was trying to hold on. Blonde hair, perfect white linen blouse, diamond earrings. Her smile was polite and cold. You must be Clark. Not a question, an assessment. Her eyes moved from my flannel shirt down to my scuffed boots and back up without finding anything impressive. Mrs. Pierce, I extended my hand. Her handshake was brief, fingers barely touching mine before pulling away. Jake appeared behind her and I saw it immediately. The nervousness, the forced smile, the way he stood too straight. My boy was terrified. Dad, this is Madison's mother, Mrs. Pierce. Welcome. Linda stepped aside. Clark Brennan. A voice boomed from inside and Carl Pierce filled the doorway. Big man, maybe 6'2", gut, that said steakhouses over horseback. Loud polo shirt, expensive boots that had never seen real work. He grabbed my hand before I could offer it, squeezing hard. One of those handshakes meant to establish dominance. I'd been in enough boardrooms to recognize the play. So you're Jake's father. Heard a lot about you. The way he said it made clear none of it was good. Madison appeared beside Jake pretty in a nervous way. It's so nice to finally meet you, Mr. Brennan. Her smile was genuine at least. Worried but genuine. How was the drive? Linda asked. Easy, good weather. Your truck handle the highway okay? Carl clapped my shoulder. Those older models you never know. Runs fine. Reliable. That's what matters. He said it like he was being generous. Carl suggested showing me the property. Family legacy. 5 generations. Want to see what we've built? We walked into the Texas heat, Carl, in tour guide mode. Pierce Land. 200 acres. Been in the family since 1880. He swept his arm across the view. Real estate is everything, Clark. What you own defines who you are. I nodded, but I was watching. Really watching. The main barn looked good from the house fresh paint on the front. But up close I could see the back side. Peeling paint. Rust on the hinges. Equipment that hadn't moved in years. How many head you running these days? I asked, keeping my voice innocent. Carl's smile tightened. We've downsized operations temporarily, shifted focus to investments and land development. Translation. They weren't ranching anymore, couldn't afford to. The cattle pens were mostly empty, fencing sagging in places missing boards. One outbuilding had broken windows and a door hanging off its hinges. This barn looks like it could hold a lot of equipment. Yeah, we're restructuring operations. Carl waved vaguely, already moving past it. We walked back toward the house, Carl getting more comfortable, more condescending. So Jake says you're in computers. That's right, consulting. IT security for small businesses? Computer stuff. He laughed loud and dismissive. Well, somebody's got to do it right. Keeps me busy. I bet it does. Steady work, not glamorous, but steady. He nodded like he was relating to me, the working man. Linda met us on the patio, tall glass of something expensive in her hand. Did Carl bore you with the ranch history? It's beautiful land. It's more than land, Clark. Linda's voice went soft, almost reverent. It's legacy. Something you build over generations. She paused, looking at me like she was trying to decide if I could possibly understand. It defines who you are, where you come from. The implication was clear. I didn't have legacy. I had a job. There was a difference. Carl clapped me on the shoulder again, harder this time, like I was a child who'd tried his best. Come on, Clark. Let's head out back. Guests are arriving. The backyard was staged like a magazine spread. Carl handed me a Lone Star and a can no glass while pouring premium bourbon for everyone else. Message received. Massive stone patio furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars string. Lights hung like this was Napa Valley instead of Texas. A professional-grade grill sat gleaming in the corner, all stainless steel and expensive knobs. I noticed immediately it wasn't properly seasoned, barely used. This wasn't a family that actually grilled. This was a family that performed grilling. 4 or 5 guests were already scattered around drinks in crystal glasses, looking like they'd stepped out of a country club catalog. Expensive casual. The kind of people who spent money to look like they weren't trying. Carl made introductions. Everyone, this is Clark, Jake's father. The way he said it, I might as well have been the help. They sized me up in seconds. Flannel shirt, scuffed boots, beer can instead of bourbon. Their smiles were polite and dismissive. One woman in a designer sundress actually looked past me to continue her conversation with Linda, like I wasn't quite worth the interruption. The seating arrangement told the whole story. Carl, Linda, and the guests sat in cushioned chairs, arranged in a tight circle. Close, intimate. My chair was a folding one positioned just outside it. Close enough to count. Far enough to remind me I didn't belong. I wasn't really part of anything. Jake and Madison sat somewhere in between. Jake stared at his phone like it might rescue him. He hadn't looked at me since we stepped outside. A catering truck pulled up and uniformed staff began unloading trays. Best BBQ caterer in Austin, Carl announced. Marcus does all the high-end events. 200 a head, but you can taste the difference. The food arrived on fancy plates. Small portions garnished arranged like art. Brisket that belonged on butcher paper was served on porcelain. Any real pitmaster would have walked out. So Clark, the woman in the sundress said, smiling, "What part of Austin are you in?" "Riverside." Oh, her voice brightened. That area is so authentic. Really up and coming. Everyone nodded. Sympathetic, understanding. The conversation moved on before I could reply. Up and coming. That's what people said about neighborhoods they'd never live in. A man in expensive golf wear asked, "What do you drive?" "Ford F-150, 2015. "Nice. My foreman has one. Reliable trucks." "My foreman. Not I have one." "My foreman." I was officially grouped with the hired help. Carl laughed. "Clark knows trucks. Working man's vehicle. Built Ford tough." He raised his bourbon. "Not glamorous, but they get the job done right." They chuckled friendly like I was in on the joke. The conversation drifted to investments, portfolios, real estate, opportunities. Terms floated around like passwords proof of belonging. They talked over me, around me, through me. Madison tried to pull me in. Jake stayed silent, shrinking in his chair. Carl smiled. "You wouldn't know much about investments, Clark, today." That was when Uncle Dale arrived, and the insults finally put on work boots. A dusty Chevy pickup rolled into the drive, nothing like the polished showpieces parked nearby. This truck actually worked for a living. Dented tailgate, mud-caked tires, tools visible through the back window. The man who stepped out looked like what Carl only pretended to be. Mid-40s, sun-weathered face hands shaped by real labor, worn Wranglers, genuine work boots stained with honest dirt, a sweat-faded hat that had lived under the Texas sun for years. Dale Pierce walked over with an easy smile and held out his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, real. "Nice to meet you, Clark. Jake's told me good things." Before I could answer, Carl slipped an arm around his brother's shoulders. "Dale, this is Clark, Jake's father. You two probably have a lot in common." The message landed cleanly. Workers, not owners. Men who use their hands. Dale caught it. Something flickered across his face, discomfort, maybe embarrassment, but he didn't challenge his brother. "You work the ranch?" I asked. "Manage operations," Dale said. 30 years now. He seemed genuinely interested. "Jake mentioned you grew up around ranching." "My grandfather had a small place, helped him summers. Learned enough to know what I don't know." Dale laughed. "That's more than most. What did he run?" "Mostly cattle, some hay. About 80 acres outside Lubbock." We slipped into real conversation. Drought cycles, grass rotation, water rights in hill country. The kind of talk you only have if you've lived it. Dale was sharp, asking thoughtful questions, sharing practical insights. For a few minutes, things felt normal. Then Carl stepped back, in voice loud enough to reassert control. Clark's being modest. He's in computers now. He said computers like it was a downgrade. Left real work for desk jobs. Dale opened his mouth, then closed it. Carl kept going. Ever think about getting back to ranch work? Clark, real work? I stay busy consulting. But consulting... Carl shook his head, concerned. So unstable? Especially at your age. You need security. Linda joined in. Something steady. Reliable income. We're always looking for good people, Carl continued. Hard workers. Honest labor. All eyes shifted to us. Jake froze. This wasn't private anymore. You've got that authentic look, Carl said, gesturing at me. Physical work keeps you young. Better than sitting at a computer. The golf shirt guest chimed in. What's your hourly rate? Hourly labor. Intentional. I bill by project. Carl laughed. Exactly. Feast or famine. Hourly work is reliable. What kind of work? I asked calmly. Carl brightened. Maintenance. Fence repair. Carpentry. Upkeep. Dale could use another set of hands, he said. Skilled hands. Linda smiled. Good steady work. Fresh air. Better than chasing contracts at your age. At your age. I could teach you the business, Carl added. Land management, development. Build something real instead of, he waved vaguely, computers. The irony almost hurt. This man was weeks from losing everything. A man your age needs stability, Carl pressed. Legacy? Jake finally spoke. Dad has a good job. He stopped when Carl looked at him. Oh, I'm sure, Carl said indulgently. Just talking options. Jake shrank back. Didn't defend me. Something inside me went cold. Dale shifted. Carl, I'm sure Clark's doing fine. Just helping Carl cut in. Family looks out for each other. He stood, draped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me aside. Think about it, Clark. Steady paycheck. Respect. Get you out from behind that computer before it's too late. He walked away laughing. Dale met my eyes. His apology was clear. We'll talk specifics later, Carl called, winking. Once Clark sees the opportunity. He had no idea I already knew the truth. The ranch was 3 months from foreclosure. And the man offering me a job didn't even own the land beneath his boots. After the food, Carl stood and addressed the table. Gentlemen, let's talk business. Office. He looked at the male investors, then Jake. Come on. Deliberately didn't look at me. I started to stand anyway. Oh, Clark. Carl's voice stopped me. Why don't you help Dale clean up out here? Linda can show you where everything goes. The table went quiet. Every guest suddenly fascinated by their empty plates. Jake's face showed conflict for maybe half a second. Then he followed Carl inside without a word. Linda materialized beside me with her empty plate. Didn't hand it to me. Just held it there until I took it, like I was waitstaff. Trash bags are under the kitchen sink, Clark. Her voice was pleasant and titled. You don't mind, do you? We have so much to deal with. No please, no thank you, just expectation. Dale will show you where the bins are. Dale and I carried plates and bottles toward the kitchen in silence. Once we were out of earshot, he finally spoke. I'm sorry about Carl. His voice was quiet, embarrassed. He doesn't mean... He stopped. Couldn't finish the lie. It's fine. It's not. Dale set down a stack of plates harder than necessary. Things have been tight. Financially. Carl's under pressure, but that's no excuse. The ranch, he won't listen, won't downsize, won't sell. Just keeps borrowing, trying to maintain the image. Real worry in his voice. I've been telling him for 2 years. Pride's expensive. I was carrying trash toward the kitchen when I passed the study. Door slightly open, voices carrying. I stopped, listened. Jake, this is family business now. Carl's voice friendly but firm. Madison's your future. This ranch, all this land, it'll be hers someday. Yours. But land is only valuable if you expand it, grow it. Another voice, one of the investors. The adjacent 200 acres is available. Perfect addition. We can double our holdings, Carl continued. Property values here are skyrocketing. It needs capital injection, about $200,000. Pause. Your trust fund could cover it easily. Jake's voice uncertain. I don't have a trust fund, Mr. Pierce. Carl laughed, indulgent. Jake, come on, your dad's in tech. Consulting. I know how this works. Guys like him, they hide money, tax purposes. But family is family. You can access it for something like this. Dad lives pretty modestly. I really don't think... That's exactly my point. Carl's voice got firmer. He's sitting on money. Why do you think he lives like that? It's a strategy. Trust me, there's money there. You just need to ask properly. The investor chimed in. It's a sound investment. Can't lose on land. This is once in a lifetime, Jake. Madison's going to inherit this legacy. She deserves a husband who builds it with her. A man provides for his wife, for her family. That's what real men do. Heavy pause. I'd need to talk to a financial advisor. Carl's laugh was dismissive. Advisors just charge fees and complicate things. This is family Jake. We don't need outsiders. We trust each other. I heard footsteps inside. Madison's voice. Dad, what's going on? Just discussing opportunities, sweetheart. It sounds like you're pressuring Jake. I'm not pressuring anyone. I'm offering your future husband a chance to invest in your future. Our future isn't about land. Carl's voice got harder. Everything is about land, Madison. Security, legacy. Jake understands that. Don't you, Jake? Silence from my son. Clark. Linda's voice behind me sharp, suspicious. Are you lost? I turned. She was watching me like I'd been caught stealing. Just looking for the bathroom. There's one by the back door, for guests. She pointed deliberately. Not the nice one. The other one. She guided me away from the steady suspicion clear in her eyes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The caller ID made me smile. Susan Martinez, First National Bank. Perfect timing. Excuse me, I said to Linda. I need to take this. I stepped away from the patio, but not too far. Some conversations need an audience. I stopped near the garden, maybe 20 feet from the main group, close enough for anyone paying attention to hear, far enough to look polite, like I was taking a private call. Linda was still watching me, suspicion sharp in her eyes. The other guests had drifted back into low conversations, likely whispering about whatever they'd overheard from the study. I answered the phone and kept my voice steady. Loud enough. Susan, thanks for calling me back on a Saturday. I appreciate you working weekends on this. I paused listening, but I could see Carl across the patio. He froze mid-sentence. Yes, I reviewed the full portfolio on the Pierce property. Carl's head snapped toward me. He started walking closer. The foreclosure timeline shows roughly 3 months to auction. Linda's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Color drained from her face. The ranch is mortgaged 3 times over. Outstanding debt exceeds market value by about 40%. Conversation died across the patio. One by one, people turned. Carl was close enough now to hear every word. His face went from tan to gray. I also reviewed the adjacent property they're trying to acquire. Jake appeared in the doorway, confused. He felt the tension, but didn't understand it yet. Right. The bank already owns it, has for 6 months. Carl opened his mouth. Nothing came out. They defaulted, but still think they can buy it, I said, allowing myself a small smile. The math doesn't work. Madison stepped beside Jake. Both stared at me, then at their parents. So here's my position, I said, turning slightly so everyone could hear. I'm passing on the acquisition. Linda grabbed Carl's arm. Her knuckles were white. Even at 60 cents on the dollar, it's not worth the complications. Title issues alone would take months. One guest pulled out his phone and started typing. They countered at 40 cents no. Too much liability. Let it go to auction. Dale stood back, arms crossed. He didn't look surprised, just tired. The cybersecurity contract from last quarter more than covers my liquidity needs. The guest with the phone looked up, eyes wide. The DoD project, he said quietly. That renews in January. Another leaned in, whispering. The word defense carried. Thanks, Susan. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you Tuesday. I paused, listening. Yes, the other properties are performing well. Scottsdale renewed. Seattle's ahead of schedule. I ended the call and slid the phone into my pocket. When I turned, the entire patio was staring at me. Silence. Cicadas. Ice clinking. Carl found his voice. It shook. You're the buyer, the one the bank sent. One of them, I said calmly. Banks come to me for distressed assets. Tech security pays well. Linda whispered. But you drive a 2015 F-150. Paid cash. It runs. I met her eyes. Why would I need more? The man in golf wear stared at his phone. Brennan. Clark Brennan. He looked up. You're that Brennan Security Solutions. That's my firm. You're on the Forbes Tech 50. He turned his phone. My photo filled the screen. The woman in the sundress leaned in. Number 38. Valuation. She stopped speaking. Jake's voice broke through. Dad, what's happening? I looked at my son. Confusion, shock, regret. Forbes, he asked. You're on Forbes. It was a slow news year. Carl tried to recover, smiling through sweat. Clark, there's been a misunderstanding. The opportunity I mentioned, the job I asked mildly. Working maintenance on land you don't own. Linda covered her mouth. We didn't know. We had no idea you were. I let the pause hang. Rich. The word sat heavy. And that's the problem, I said quietly. All of it. Madison started crying. What did we do? She turned to her parents. What did you do? Dale finally spoke. I warned you, Carl. 2 years. Sell, downsize. He shook his head. You chose image over reality. Carl's face cycled through colors. The drive had almost been worth it. Almost. But I wasn't finished yet. Carl tried one more time. Now, Clark, let's discuss this like businessmen. His voice was steadier now, trying to recover, trying to turn this into something he could control. There's clearly been a misunderstanding here. If we'd known about your resources, I would have been treated differently. I kept my voice level. That's my point. The investment opportunity is still valid. We could partner. You mean the scam? The word dropped like a stone. The patio went silent again. The expansion that doesn't exist. The adjacent property you can't buy because the bank already owns it. You were going to take Jake's money he doesn't even have and lose it trying to save this place. I looked at him directly. That's not investing, Carl. That's fraud. Linda's face flushed red. How dare you accuse us? We're a respected family. Respect doesn't pay mortgages, Linda. My voice stayed calm. And generations don't mean anything if this one loses it all. Susan Martinez has been my banker for 10 years. She handles my real estate portfolio across 3 states. When your loan defaulted, the file came across my desk. I knew everything before I drove up here. The debt, the missed payments, the foreclosure timeline. Carl opened his mouth, closed it. Nothing left to say. Then why? His voice cracked. Why come here? Why play the game to see who you were, who my son was choosing to join? I let that sit. I needed to know if you'd respect a man with nothing. You couldn't. You didn't. I turned to Jake. This was why I'd come. Son, I drove here in old jeans and a $15 flannel shirt. They offered me work as a ranch hand. On land they're losing. Called me a cattle hand who got lucky. Suggested I needed stability at my age. Said physical labor was more reliable than my computer stuff. My voice hardened. And you sat there, silent. Jake's face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. I was scared of losing Madison, losing... You say don't talk about my father that way? That's what you say. You stand up. You defend. Even if it costs you something. I paused. Especially if it costs you something. I was so desperate for their approval. Jake's voice broke. To be good enough for Madison, I let them treat you like... He couldn't finish. Just stood there sobbing. Like someone who didn't matter, I said quietly. Madison stepped forward. Tears streaming. You turned me into you, she said to her mother. Someone who judges people by their bank accounts. Jake is good and kind and works hard. But that wasn't enough because he didn't have money. She looked at her father. You taught me to measure people. To use people. Back to Linda. You handed him your trash like he was the help mom. Dale's voice cut through. Quiet but firm. I told you 2 years ago, Carl. Sell. Downsize before it got bad. But you couldn't let go of the image. You'd rather lose everything than admit you couldn't maintain it. Pride's expensive. And it cost you everything, including your dignity. I looked at Carl one more time. You told me on that tour, real estate defines you. What you own. But you don't own this. The bank does. I own 3 properties free and clear. But they don't define me. What defines me is raising a son who earned his degree, who works hard, who I thought had integrity and courage. I looked at Jake. I thought I knew who you were. Today you showed me I was wrong. I'll do better, Dad. Jake's voice was raw. I swear. I'll be the man you raised me to be. Please, give me a chance to prove it. I walked toward my dusty F-150. Behind me, Jake called out. For the first time all day, I heard my son's voice steady and strong. Dad, wait, please. I stopped, turned. We had a lot to talk about, but at least now we could start honest. 3 months later, my phone rang. Jake's name on the screen still made me smile different now than before the BBQ, but better, real. Hey, Dad. His voice had changed, confident, no shame hiding underneath. Jake, good to hear from you, son. I wanted to update you. The Pierce Ranch went to auction last week. Dale bought it paid cash way under market. He's already fixing it up, the real way this time. No pretense. And Carl and Linda moved to a condo in San Antonio. Downsizing. Carl's actually working again, consulting for Dale, believe it or not. Linda's adjusting. He paused. Madison's brother Thomas is working for Dale too, learning how to actually run cattle instead of just talking about legacy. I smiled at that. And Madison, she got a job, marketing firm downtown. She's good at it, Dad. Really good. And she's different. Happy. Like she finally stopped trying to be her mother. That's growth, son. We got engaged again, Jake said quietly. But this time for the right reasons. No big party, no investors to impress. Just us. Her ring cost $800, and she loves it more than any Pierce family heirloom. My chest tightened. Proud. There's something I want to talk to you about, Jake continued. Not money. I don't want your money. But maybe guidance. How you built something real. How you created value instead of just chasing it. I'd like that, I said. I'd like that a lot. Madison wants to meet with you too. To apologize properly. And to ask about building something that lasts. Come by Sunday. We'll talk about legacy, the real kind. Thanks, Dad, for everything, for the test, for not giving up on me. I looked out my window at the F-150 in the driveway. Same truck, same man, but a better son. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, Jake. It's who. I'm learning that. Good. That's real inheritance. Looking back now, I realize the biggest mistake wasn't hiding my wealth from Jake. It was almost losing him to people who measured worth in dollars instead of character. If you're reading this, don't make my mistake. Don't wait until a BBQ confrontation to teach your children what really matters. Start now. Show them that a man's value isn't in his truck or his bank account, but in how he treats people when nobody's watching. God gave me 3 months to rebuild what I almost lost with my son. 3 months to show him that true legacy isn't property or inheritance, it's integrity. The Bible says in Proverbs, a good name is more desirable than great riches. I learned that lesson the hard way at the Pierce Ranch. This true story taught me something my father never did. Wealth is a test, not a trophy. God doesn't ask how much you accumulated. He asks what you did with it and who you became while building it. Carl Pierce had land but lost his dignity. I had money but almost lost my son's respect. My advice: teach your kids to defend what's right, even when it costs them something. Jake's silence hurt more than every insult Carl and Linda threw. But his redemption that phone call 3 months later reminded me why Grandpa's stories like these matter. Not because they're about money or revenge, but because they pass down values that outlast any estate. This is a true story from my life. One of those painful Grandpa stories you never forget, and I'm sharing it as a warning. Don't let your children become the Jakes who stay silent, or the Madisons who judge by appearance. God blessed me with a second chance. Not everyone gets one. If you're a parent, teach them now. If you're a child, honor your parents not for what they have, but for who they are. When my grandpa's stories become Jake's someday, I want him to remember this true story, that I chose integrity over image, and that God honored that choice. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to test someone's character, or been tested yourself? Drop your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone facing the same struggle. And if this story moved, you please hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear it today. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from real stories like these. Thank you for being here, and may God bless your family with wisdom to cherish what truly matters.